Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi, I'm Natasha Milani, CEO of South Australian Leaders. I'm passionate about supporting the growth of businesses through the power of collaboration, helping companies to connect, scale and grow. This podcast is all about collaboration for anyone who runs a business. It can be lonely at the top. I believe no one executes alone. We all do better when we do it together. These are real companies talking about real challenges and how they strive to overcome them. Let's all learn and share together. Today I'm talking with a local South Australian who's managed to mix his expertise in farming and his legal background, founding a company called AgriWebb along with two other partners. Welcome, John Fargher.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
John, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're a local South Australian, yet you've had some global experience. Can you just share your background with those that are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, I've born and bred here in South Australia and returned after being away for about 10 years, but grew up in the far north of South Australia. For those listening know where that is, in the Flinders Ranges, on a sheep and cattle station, been there 5 generations. So, grew up in the depths of working on a station. And from there, I became very passionate about the ag industry and in particular innovation. And I saw in the decades kind of where my father and grandfather were running the place, call it the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, we're on a large scale place, about 400,000 acres. And we had a staff of about 40 in those early years, and everything took weeks to months to do anything. With the evolution of technology and horses were replaced by motorbikes, replaced by a Cessna aeroplane, what took a month could now take 2 hours, right? So major transformational changes in those decades. When I look back in more of my generation, the sort of last 10, 20, 30 years, we haven't seen the same sorts of impactful shifts. And so when I was looking at this, I was like, we were still kind of running our business the way we always had, largely around decision making. We didn't have good quality data to make decisions on what was working and what was not working in the business. So that for me prompted me to go and look at some software to help run our business. And sure enough, we bought some about 20 odd years ago. It came in a floppy disk and it stayed that way in the top drawer of an office. So that was kind of my experience in terms of technology, but in particular software in ag. And it just so turns out that the ag industry is the least digitized industry in the world, even though it's one of the most fundamental in feeding the global population. And livestock agriculture and sheep and cattle is what I mean by that, is the least digitized of the least digitized. So for me, that was really some burning passion growing up, and always wanted to do something about having an impact in the industry, an impact in innovation. So that was kind of, you know, what got me going and got me thinking about some of the opportunities, and then eventually led to founding AgriWebb in 2014 to do something about it. And I guess, you know, just to paint a bit of a picture about what we do, right? So AgriWebb is a farm and livestock management software platform. So what does that mean? It means we build software for farmers. And so really we're replacing that pencil and paper notebook that sits in the top pocket of a farmer, or at best, if anything ever meets a spreadsheet, we replace that by every farmer's now got a smartphone in their pocket. So they would now go and kind of enter any information and run their business effectively from their smartphone. So that obviously pertains that, well, in order for our product to get legs, we've got to have to go and find a whole bunch of farmers that are interested in our product and that want to take that up. So the early days of when we started AgriWebb in 2015 in Australia was really around the adoption of technology as a whole was very poor and very low. So we had to go to market and create an enormous amount of education and awareness of what's the problem with actually running a business off pencil and paper, apart from that notebook falling in the stock trough or going through the washing machine, which every farmer would joke about on a weekly basis. And then it's really around, right, you've got a problem and here's some solution, and here's the added value and benefits, and this is what it means for your business in the future. So just spent a lot of time and effort going through that process, but also at the end of the day, we had to find customers or farmers that were actually going to buy our product. So those early days, it was driving down driveways, it was spending a lot of time, lots of cups of teas across the kitchen table, understanding problems, working out what those solutions could be. And then as a software company, we write all our own software. So we have an in-house team and have from day one. That was another thing that was paramount from when we set this business up, is we were not going to offshore anything we do in our business, including the development of software offshore or internationally, because you then lose that connection with the customer, you lose the ability to turn around a high quality product. So what that meant was we had to spend a lot of time with customers, a lot of time with our product and engineering team to then turn that feedback into reality. And then once you find, a good kind of product market fit, then we need to try and scale that up and get customers to not only buy the software, but renew and support ongoing. Because as AgriWebb is what we call a SaaS business, software as a service, it is a reoccurring business model. So if customers don't come back and renew on the software, then no one's getting value. The end user's not getting value and the company's not getting any value because it's all based off a recurring business model.
A unique industry and a growing business model. So let's just go back a bit. There's Justin and Kevin, who are your business partners. This podcast, we focus on a thread of collaboration throughout the story. So just tell me how the three of you came together and with what experience, background.
Yeah, absolutely. We all came kind of with a bit of a unique skill set, in this. And we mentioned that I kind of grew up on the farm and actually went on to be a lawyer. Not that I probably wanted to be a lawyer, but it kind of gave a good background. And the other two business partners, one, Kevin, is an American guy, never been on a farm, no ag background, but was in commercializing technology and really wanted to have an impact in real industries. And then Justin, third co-founder, has a finance background, has built and sold a number of other kind of companies in the finance space, but also has a family farm. He has a very similar story to I in growing up, where he kind of came back to the kitchen table. He had a manager and a bunch of advisors sitting around a table saying about how much money, he had to invest in fertilizer inputs and all these types of things. And with his financial background, he was like, okay, great. Well, where's all the data? Like, what's my return on investment going to be if you're saying I need to do all these practices? And there was a blank look around the kitchen table. It's like, oh no, well, this is just the way we've always done things. So for him, kind of from a finance and a maths background, he's like, well, surely there's got to be a better way. He also went on a journey to look for software, and of course, he didn't find anything that was going to suit his needs. So that was when he sort of had a light bulb moment of, well, maybe there's an opportunity here. All of us having kind of an entrepreneurial background in our own right. And Justin and Kevin sort of knew each other from this kind of college days. They got together, and I was actually in London at the time, and I was having a beer, as you do, talking about solving all the problems of the world with another Adelaide guy, as it turns out, and he had just finished studying with Justin and Kevin, and he said, "Oh, gee, I reckon you're talking about all these ag tech opportunities. I reckon you should get in touch with the other two guys that have just moved back to Australia to look at this." So sure enough, we got on a Skype chat. This was 2014, and we got on like a house on fire. We decided we were going to solve all the problems in the world, and I ended up resigning from my job in London, along with my now wife, convinced her to come back to Australia. And at this point in time, we hadn't actually met my other two co-founders. So we kind of took a huge leap of faith. This was pre-COVID, where not much business was done on Skype. Zoom didn't exist. So everyone was, saying, "What, you're completely mad. Why are you guys quitting your jobs for something that could be a complete unknown?" And, for me and for the three of us, we're extremely passionate about the opportunity, but also knew that we could all be going and doing other things with our lives. And we were, solely dedicated to making this work. And hey, worst case scenario, if it didn't work, well, we could revert back to our previous careers. So that's how it all started, and we kicked off in a garage in Melbourne in 2014.
Great story. Three of you in a garage, wanting to solve the world's problems in your area of expertise. You've now got 70 plus staff, and you not just sell your products in Australia, UK and the US, and you've just announced you've entered the Brazilian market this week, if I understand.
Yes, that's true, actually. So, we started in Australia. Australia is still where our head office is and our core market share. Over 25% of the animals in Australia are on our platform, so we have significant market share here. We opened in the UK in 2018, and we opened in the US in 2020. Great timing, as we opened the US market in January of 2020. 3 months later, COVID hit. So we had to basically build our entire team virtually and also find our first customers virtually and kind of kick off the go-to-market process in a whole new world. They are our 3 hubs, but we do support customers in about 18 geographies. And as you mentioned, we just opened in Brazil with a strategic partner, a company called Cargill, who are actually one of the world's largest family-owned businesses. They're involved in 95% of the global food supply chain. So they are effectively a strategic resale partner for us in Brazil, where they have a nutrition team that are basically selling our software and getting their clients on board the platform.
Another great example of collaboration. That is a good business model, isn't it, for markets where I guess you're a bit arm's length? Would that be?
Yeah, the Brazilian market for us was a challenging one, largely for 2 reasons. One, around the kind of legal, tax and financial mechanisms. Very difficult to do business in Brazil externally. You have to kind of set up entities and infrastructure so that you can wade your way through the nightmare of taxes. The other one really is, just the barriers of a market that exists. You really need on-the-ground trusted relationships that already have offerings and relationships on the ground, rather than coming in from abroad and trying to make a success of it. So that's really where you've got to look at, on a market-by-market basis or a segment-by-segment basis, what the best route to market is. And I guess in that mode, we sort of have 3 segments of our business. The bottom is what we call our, the typical SMB market, small to medium businesses. That's our family farmer, our family rancher. That's kind of a direct model. So we have a pretty well-oiled kind of marketing and inbound sales machine where, we put out a whole bunch of marketing. We then kind of run them through a free trial and then convert them into a paid customer through an inbound sales team. We then have our kind of mid-market segment. So this is effectively the larger corporate farming groups. They have a head office, they have other needs, other products and services. This would be more of an outbound model, longer sales cycles and those types of things. And then we have what's called our enterprise segment. And we define that as their core business is not farming, but they rely on farms or animals to run their business. So think of rural finance, think of meat processing, think of animal health and nutrition, any product or service that sits in and around the farm. And where we can add significant value is through data sharing. And so ultimately the end of all of this is, sure, we're a software company, but at the end of the day, we're a data company. And, we're really clear with our customers that the farmers own their data, but we can look to leverage that and add value to not only the farmer, but the ecosystem that sits around that. So that's kind of the way we structure our business and then think about, how we can kind of productize that in and around it.
I'm really passionate about talking about, you mentioned then you're not a software company, you're a data company. And I think that shift in thinking is applicable to so many businesses and so many different sectors. Can you just talk through where that transition came from, how you think about that in your business? What does that mean for decision-making in your business? And have you always considered yourself to be a data company? Yeah,
I say that loosely. At the end of the day, we still are a software company. We write software and deploy that to our customers. But from day one, we always had a focus on what the value of data could be to the industry. And so we did that even from the very first day of how we thought about pricing and packaging our software and our products, right? So it was really around, if we could lower the barrier to entry and have a very low price point, we would really look at a strategy of getting as many farms and as many animals under management on our platform as possible, and as much data that could sit behind that so that we could then add value back to our farmers through aggregated or benchmarked insights, and then to the broader ecosystem. So it's been in our thought process and our strategy from day one. And, we actually kind of one of our key KPIs and metrics that we measure is animals under management, right? So we're always tracking, how the growth of that is in terms of, growing the platform, because behind that is an incredibly valuable data set for our client base.
And just touching on the partnership you have with your distributor in Brazil, can you just share a little insight into some of the learning around finding, negotiating? What are some of the success elements that you were looking for when you looked for a partner? Yeah,
it's a great point, because a lot of the time you might not necessarily be looking for partners or looking for opportunities. They just arise. And so, the Brazil market is the largest commercial cattle herd in the world, 200 million head, call it, almost 10 times the size of the Aussie market. So if you were to sit back and say, at some point in time, we would enter that market. But it's not like it's been on, the highest radar internally to do. And so it was more of a function of an opportunity kind of landed on our table, on our desk, and then we kind of needed to work through that. And actually, we entered the Brazilian market a few years ago with another partner, and it wasn't successful. And the reason it wasn't successful is we actually had a great relationship with the people on the ground. We met them at a conference. It's a classic, great minds, come alike, and we had a couple of beers and we said, right, we're going to launch together in Brazil. What happened is we both didn't put enough energy and resources into it, and ultimately it failed. So we decided, look, let's part ways and we'll revisit it another time. A couple of years later, similar scenario, we met some folk at Cargill, and the conversation went, right, let's launch in Brazil, and you can do all this work for us and kind of localize the product. Because keep in mind, we have to convert it to Portuguese. We have to do a whole bunch of work in the software to make it applicable to farming in Brazil. So quite a big investment on our end. And we said, look, we need a significant commitment on both ends to make this successful, because we've failed in the past, right? And so we went through about 2 years of running pilots, getting feedback from farmers on the ground, and that's a critical component in all of this. We actually need to make sure we're always getting feedback from our core customer, rather than just sitting in our ivory tower being like, isn't this great? The market's going to love it. So we made sure we spent a good couple of years getting all of that feedback, and then we had those conversations around what it would look like for us to partner and to be successful in that. And so what came from, hey, let's just get going, actually went, no, we're going to go right to the top. We're going to have a significant long-term partnership, and we're going to make sure that we're setting it up for success by putting the necessary resources behind it.
And then you spent that 2 years and you understood your customer.
Core customer.
And I'm assuming, you mentioned earlier that your business partner, I think it was Kevin, that went out to market and searched what was already in the marketplace. Just some of those fundamental pieces of a good business strategy. Was that the same as, with the Brazil opportunity? Yeah,
that's been the same as any time we've entered a new market, right? We've gone into not only the Australian market, but the UK, US and Brazil. So, that whole process is always, looking at your competitive offerings and looking at also the pain points that market's trying to solve for. And so, you're putting this across the lens of how big's that market, what's the total addressable size, what's the service addressable size. And they're never perfect, right? So you're never really going to come out, you don't want to spend months and years mapping all this information out, because you're never going to get it quite right. You just need to have a basic understanding of, is it a big market? Can we get into this market? And then what are the barriers and risks into this market? And one of them is a competitive offering. So with our partner in Brazil as an example, they also scoured the market for other software products, right? We weren't the only ones they were looking at. So they did a whole bunch of work and went out there and said, right, what's the local offering? And they did a whole assessment. They're obviously a huge organization, 160,000 people in this organization. So they have the resources to be able to put towards a full market analysis. And they still came back and said, AgriWebb is the best in the business and they're the right partner for us. But they definitely did their due diligence. And likewise on our end, we'd already failed with a previous partner, and so we made sure that we had everything required to make this partnership successful.
Sounds a fundamental, simple 101 business, but I guess what I'm hearing from you is the absolute commitment to doing that due diligence, but not, keeping it sort of realistic at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. You can spend all the money and time in the world of creating strategies and getting advisors in, and look, we've done that as well. And actually, we were entering the US market, and we went and engaged a Big Four to write this big paper, and we paid them way too much money, and they came back with this glossy report that gave us everything we already knew, and said that gave us a whole bunch of these recommendations that we either knew we would do or knew we definitely wouldn't do. So we spent a lot of time and money kind of really getting information that we already knew, and we just didn't know. You just don't need to go down the path of engaging, when really you can get a good 80% of the way there with kind of good fundamentals. Now, I say this with, if you're a huge multinational banking organisation, yeah, you probably do need to go through a significant amount of due diligence. But I would say for the most part, you just need to get the basics going. And critically, I would say in all go-to-market scenarios, you need to get on the ground and have conversations. And I always say, a day on the road is more important than 3 months in an office. So what you can learn having conversations, whether you're sitting across the table from a farmer, right, and the information you can get, or getting in region and understanding what's happening on the ground, or going and meeting strategic partners and understanding how they're going to operate and how they're going to tick, you'll learn more from that than you ever could engaging a Big Four consultancy firm or sitting behind Google for 3 months. So get on the ground, have conversations, and you'll be a good chunk of the way there.
I love that. A day on the road is more effective than 3 months in the office. And our audience is, SME business owners and listeners typically, and that is a refreshing reminder. And after reading your history and hearing your story, I can sense that you have never stopped that customer-facing focus and engagement. And I just think that is also a nice reminder for those listening to just always have that front of mind.
Absolutely. It's very easy to get complacent. It's easy to sit back and not actually speak to our customers and speak to them in their environment. And I would still say that the thing I enjoy the most out of my job, which is largely sitting behind Zoom in various geographies, is the days I do spend with a customer on farm or with a partner, really understanding what's going on. That's what gives me the most buzz. So.
Great insight. You just alluded to the fact that you engaged a Big Four. You obviously have since 2014-15. Your strategy has evolved, significant growth in the business. I love asking about the process around strategic planning and how you execute in your business. I think that's a great learning for SME businesses. Can you just talk to the audience about, how do you goal set? How do you measure? What playbook do you use? What works for your business?
Yeah, so, our business is one of, we've raised a number of rounds of funding. We've always focused on growth. And so in order to do that, right, it means that you're going to have to make decisions that are going to encourage investment, right? So, you've got to focus on your core business, but you've also got to be thinking about, if we're going to raise another round of funding, what's an investor or a potential investor going to be looking for? So that's got to also help the narrative of, what strategy you're putting in place. I've talked about geographical expansion. I've talked about our different segments. So that's kind of at an external high level of, right, on the top of the whiteboard, what's our major goal we're tracking towards? And then as that flows down, you've got to actually execute on that, and you've got to have a mechanism internally from a team perspective to go then execute on those goals. So why we would have, large goals around, right, this year we've got to raise another round of funding, or this year we're going to open a new market, or this year we're going to create a new product or a new segment, all of which we've done throughout the history of AgriWebb. At the end of the day, we need a mechanism internally to get our team on the ground to actually execute on that. So we adopted a mechanism or a tool really that's called OKRs. It's actually, the acronym is for Objectives and Key Results. And we adopted this a few years ago. This is actually a tool that's come out of some of the large technology companies. Google is one of them that kind of adopted this, and it's proliferated through the industry. The good thing about this is, you still go through a mechanism of creating your high-level strategy. You still go through a mechanism of goal setting, whatever that may be, right? And say, this year we want to achieve a revenue goal or a new market or a new product. But really what the OKRs do is set a mechanism all the way down from effectively your team member on the ground all the way to an executive level, and they can all roll up in a nice, easy format so that everyone knows every single day the work that they are doing to achieve those goals. So I guess to break that down, in the OKRs, an objective is something aspirational that you want to achieve. So you might say, right, we want to open a new geography, or we want to create a new product that is going to increase our market share significantly, something that the team is going to get behind. And then the key results is effectively how you measure your progress towards that. So they are really measurable things. So you'd say, right, if we were going to create a new product, for an example, let's call it create a new software module. The key results behind that would be how many subscribers are we going to get, right? We want to have 100 new subscribers as a key result, and then you can measure that in that time period. So you might say we're going to do OKRs every quarter, right? In Q1, we're going to have launched this product and we're going to have 100 new subscribers. And then you can set as many key results as you want. And then below that, you would have sort of tasks or initiatives. What are the team members need to do in order to deliver that key result. And these are the things that can change. So you might say, right, at the start of the quarter, we're going to need to make 500 phone calls, and we think that they're going to convert into 100 sales, right? It may work out that actually the phone calls aren't working at all, and you've got to flip your initiative because the key result's not changing, but the activities do change to get there. So this can then scale the whole way down to, whether you're a salesperson or you're an engineer or whether you're a support person, and those initiatives and those key results can then, ultimately lead up all the way to the top goal, which means that the whole organization is singing from the same hymn sheet. They all know exactly what they need to do. They're measuring their work stream, and each work stream kind of flows up to the top.
And well explained. Can I just say that was very practical insight. The team engagement piece, or the execution and team engagement piece, is critical. You mentioned earlier conversations. In fact, you and I talked earlier about the Crucial Conversations as a book that those listening may like to read. Talk to me about, how you engage your team in that context.
I think engagement, communication, culture is absolutely critical, and it's critical in every single business, particularly when labour is such a big issue for most organisations. So
very much.
Finding people is very difficult, retaining people is very difficult, and if you don't have an eye on kind of a good culture around that, it's going to be very difficult for any business. So that's a big focus of what we do, and that's not just around, are we having like beers on a Friday night, or are we going go-karting every year? Right, it's really around engaging people so that they wake up every day excited to go to work and excited to do their best. And there's a whole bunch of ways we do that in our organisation, and we monitor and track this through engagement surveys, and then we get specific feedback on engagement surveys, and then show people the steps and the changes we've made. And we track this every quarter, right? So that's one way that we keep our culture continuously improving. And the other one is really around communication and conversation. So this is making sure that everyone has the opportunity to kind of talk to anyone in the business, and we have a very collaborative way of teams communicating and departments communicating. And there's just one tool we use and one resource that we use is called Crucial Conversations, and that is the author of that is by a guy called Stephen Covey. For anyone that's read, I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, so quite a common resource. Crucial Conversations is an output of that, and it's a great framework of how we can actually set up very effective ways of communicating and actually having tough conversations, but breaking down those barriers so that you don't have to wait a year for an annual review to then have a conversation with someone in your team. You can have very responsive, immediate feedback, and there's a whole bunch of tools in those resources that are very effective in terms of having better conversations. And this is not just in the workplace, but this can be at home, this can be with customers, this can be with prospects. So it's a great kind of holistic, rounded resource for that. And there's a kind of theory that relationships make business successful, but actually it's the conversations with people that makes it successful. So I would urge anyone interested in this to go and have a look at that and see if it's going to work for them. Well,
that's how you build a relationship, right? Through a conversation.
Absolutely.
We've actually covered a lot in the last sort of half hour, and I think we could almost keep talking for many hours, and we may even get you back, John, to have another chat. But is there one last insight that you would like to share with the audience, those that are listening that are running a business, making decisions, managing people? One little insight you'd like to share with them to summarise?
Look, I think there's probably lots of things in there. We've covered a fair few topics, but one thing we've talked about, which I like, is making sure you're getting on the road, having conversations, speaking to your customers. And the other little quote or anecdote I like is a very simple phrase. We hashtag it across our business, and it's called "Don't Ask, Don't Get." What that means is actually I don't know whether it's I came up with it on my own or I found it somewhere else, but it's definitely part of my persona now. And what that tool is in every simple environment, just ask questions, right? Obviously do it in a respectful way, but you never know what the outcome could be if you don't ask. And so be inquisitive, be creative, be an active listener, and ask that question, and you never know what might come in return.
I love it. I don't think we could finish on a better note. John, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the success of your business. Fantastic to have you based here in South Australia, the beautiful place that we live and call home. Appreciate your time. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
I really hope you enjoyed this chat and it inspires you to harness your own power of collaboration. You can contact me, Natasha Milani, via LinkedIn or saleaders.com.au. All my details are in the show notes. And thank you for listening.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.